morning, everyone. I would invite you to reach for your gray hymnal as you rise in body or in spirit, turning to hymn number 170, that's 170, as we join in singing together, We Are Gentle, Angry People, hymn number 170. A gentle, angry people, and we are singing for our lives. We are a gentle, angry people, and we are singing for our lives. We are a justice-seeking people, and we are singing for our lives. We are a justice-seeking people, and we are singing for our lives. We are young and old together, and we are singing for our lives. We are young and old together, and we are singing for our lives. We are a land of many colors, and we are singing for our lives. We are a land of many colors. We are singing for our lives. We are gay and straight together. We are gay and straight together, and we are singing for our lives. We are gay and straight together, and we are singing for our lives. We are a gentle, loving people, and we are singing for our lives. We are a gentle, loving people, and we are singing for our lives. Thank you. Please have a seat.
Good morning and welcome to the First Unitarian Universalist Congregation of Ann Arbor, Michigan. If you are newer to our community or we haven't had the chance to meet yet, I am the Reverend Manish Mishra-Marzetti, serving our community as senior minister. It's my privilege to welcome you on behalf of myself and our chancel team today. Whether you're joining us here in the sanctuary in person, live streaming from home right now, or watching on demand at a later time, it's good that we have chosen to be together in community this Sunday. As many of you know, our congregation has been meeting continuously here in the city of Ann Arbor since 1865, helping bring alive the vision of a free and liberal faith, one in which each of us is free to explore and discover what it means to be human as we support one another on that human journey with our collective love and care. If you are a newcomer to us, you've recently joined us or in the process of getting to know us, We're glad that you've chosen to be with us, and we hope that you will find here a like-minded people, one who share your values and your commitment to bringing those values alive in the world. Following the conclusion of today's service, if you are newer to us, we invite you to join us in the Redmond Room, which as you exit those double doors, it's the first set of doors to your left. In that space will be members of our community who will be available to answer questions about Unitarian Universalism more broadly or our congregation more specifically. If you are newer to us and are joining us via live stream, we invite you to take a moment to introduce yourselves in the chat. Let us know where you are joining from. I'm sure there will be members of our community there who will be eager to welcome you and greet you. If you're watching on demand later in the week, please contact Reverend Mandy Beal, our acting coordinator of the membership journey, or truly any of us on staff up to and including myself. Any of us would be happy to help orient you to our congregation and answer your questions. In addition, we invite you to take a moment to fill out a newcomer survey. You can do that by going to uuaa.org/newcomersurvey. Doing so will allow us to stay in touch with you and let you know about important events that are coming up in our community. A couple of announcements for today. First, you may or may not be aware, we are going to be restarting our congregation's Chalice Circle program, which is opportunities to meet with other congregants in smaller groups to get better acquainted and develop relationship, usually around a process of shared spiritual reflection on a topic. Sign-ups will be occurring in our social hall following the conclusion of the service. Please let us know if you're interested in joining a Chalice Circle. In addition, I'd like to invite into the pulpit our board president, Enrique Flores-Boss, who will be sharing important information about an upcoming board event on February 8th.
Hi, good morning. My name is Enrique Flores-Boss, and I serve as president of the board. And as such, I would like to warmly invite you to the town hall the board is hosting this coming Saturday, February 8th, 11 a.m. to 12 noon on Zoom and in FAS. We hold such town halls periodically about topics of importance to the congregation as part of our board responsibility to help develop and further the vision for the future created by this congregation. And the topic for Saturday is sanctuary. UUAA has been a sanctuary congregation for years, protecting the most vulnerable in times of crisis. And in the current moment, sanctuary has emerged as an overarching theme across the Vision 2050 priority areas, and a number of social justice and other groups are ramping up activity in this space. I'm deeply grateful for their good work and hope you will join me on Saturday to learn more, share your perspectives, and ask questions. Please register to attend through the links in the weekly news bulletin and the UUA.org.calendar. Thanks, Manish.
Thank you, Enrique. So that is this upcoming Saturday, February 8th at 11 a.m., both in person and on Zoom. The board will be having a conversation on the topic of sanctuary, UUAA's longstanding commitment to being such a sanctuary, and what might it mean for the time that we are in and moving further into. Please join us for that important conversation next Saturday. I invite you now to just join me in a breath as we begin to ground ourselves and center ourselves in our time together today. The past 2 weeks have been a flurry of activity both nationally and locally, with almost too much information and too many needs erupting in short succession. It's easy to feel overwhelmed in the midst of that. And our values, our deeper sense of purpose and commitment, can hold us steady and guide us towards the next right thing, if we remain true to those values. It's in that spirit that we're joined this Sunday by our recently installed Washtenaw County Sheriff, Alyshia Dyer. Alyshia will share with us later in today's service about the values and sense of commitment that are guiding her work in our county on all of our behalves. I'll offer a few additional words of introduction and welcome when we get to that part of service. For now, thank you for being with us, Sheriff Dyer. And now I invite you to find that place of centering, remain in that place of centering and grounding in your heart as we move more deeply into our time together today.
We are a gentle, angry people. And it is right to feel angry in a country and a world rife with injustices and outrages. Injustices and outrages that do not exist merely as part of some natural order, but that are being consciously and deliberately waged against the most vulnerable among us. And it is right to remain gentle in a world that goads us into becoming hard, inflexible, unfeeling. As we join Unitarian Universalists around the world in kindling the flame of our chalice this morning, like we do each Sunday, it is good to bask in the truth and love it represents, to savor our UUA community and our shared values. And then, it is good to transform our anger into the energy of action, to use our anger to make things better. Today, I would like to invite back to the chancel Henrika Flores-Boss to light the chalice. As Henrika lights our chalice here in the sanctuary, we invite our online community to light a chalice of your own, perhaps sharing in the chat the chalice is lit and from where you're joining us today. Please join me as we speak together our chalice lighting words. We light this chalice for the light of truth. We light this chalice for the warmth of love. We light this chalice for the energy of action. We light this chalice for the harmony of peace. Thank you, Henrika. Occasionally, when I have spent too long in my anger, wallowed in it just a bit, I have found it manifesting in pernicious, misplaced, and sometimes surprising ways. I realize that I have been short with a friend or uncharitable with a stranger who has inconvenienced me in some trivial, momentary way that I just can't let go of. Or I've neglected the needs of a family member or loved one because I couldn't see past my own anxiety in that moment. In these sadly precedented times, we have to remain vigilant with ourselves and with each other, to take care of and be patient with ourselves and each other, to live in covenant with each other, remembering that our law is one of service, and that we are powered by love, even and especially when things are difficult. Let us join our voices together in speaking the words of our covenant. The spirit of this church is love, and service is its law. This is our covenant with each other, to dwell together in peace, to search for truth in love, and to help one another.
I've had a lot of difficult conversations with my kids lately. In 2016, at the onset of the first Trump administration, they were in the toddler and baby stages, so I was spared from having to say much to them at all. But this time around, now that they're older, I feel a deep responsibility to make them understand not only the horrors that have been unleashed on vulnerable people, but also the danger to our democracy's very survival. How do you explain fascism to a 9-year-old? How do you respond when your kids ask you why our leaders would target trans and queer kids? We do not have the luxury of shielding our children from the cascade of bad news. Parents of black children have never had that luxury. Parents of trans kids have never had that luxury. Immigrant and refugee parents have never had that luxury. Parents of children and youth that need access to reproductive care no longer have that luxury. Those of us in positions of relative privilege, now more than ever, we need to speak out on behalf of those that are struggling just to survive. These conversations are urgent, not only because our kids deserve to know the truth, because they do, but also because we know that there are very different conversations happening in households across the country. Our story for all ages this morning tells the tale of a town, much like any other town, experiencing the aftermath of an act of police violence against a person of color. Something happened in our town, a child's story about racial injustice, written by Marianne Solano, Marietta Collins, and Ann Hazard, illustrated by Jennifer Zivoyne. Something bad happened in our town. The grown-ups didn't think the kids knew about it, but the kids in Ms. Garcia's class heard some older kids talking about it, and they had questions. After school, Emma asked her mother, "Why did the police shoot that man?" "It was a mistake," said her mother. "Yes, the police thought he had a gun," said her father. "It wasn't a mistake," said her sister Liz. "The cops shot him because he was black." Liz added, "Some white people still think most black men and boys are dangerous, even though they're not." "Was the man that got shot dangerous?" asked Emma. "No," her mother said. "It was a mistake that is part of a pattern. This pattern is being nice to white people and mean to black people. It's an unfair pattern. Suppose you had a birthday party and invited everyone in your class except the black kids," her mother said. "How would the black kids feel?" "They would be sad," Emma said, "or mad. And you would be missing out because you never know who is going to be your best friend," said Liz. "And you can help others to be fair," said her mother. In another house, Josh asked his mother, "Can police go to jail?" "Yes," said his mother. "Why do you ask?" "That white policeman who shot the black man," said Josh. "Will he go to jail?" "What he did was wrong," said his mother. "But he won't go to jail," said his father. "Cops stick up for each other," said Josh's brother Malcolm, "and they don't like black men." Josh was confused. "Why not? Some police are black." "There are many cops, white and black, who make good choices," said his father. "But we can't always count on them to do what's right." Malcolm added, "I could get stopped by the police just because I'm black, even if I didn't do anything wrong." "That's not fair," Josh said. "What if it was a white man in the car? Would the police have shot him?" "They probably wouldn't have even stopped the car," said his father. "Some white people are treated better than black people," said his mother, "but it's not right. Everybody should be treated fairly." "Some people haven't learned yet," said his father angrily. "Why are you mad?" asked Josh. "I'm mad that we're still treated poorly sometimes, but I can use my anger to make things better," said his father. "Black people have a lot of power if we work together to make changes." "I have power," Josh said, "and I'm smart." His father smiled. "You're right." His mother added, "And you can change people's hearts by sticking up for someone who's not treated fairly." The next day, a new kid joined Emma and Josh's class. His name was Ahmad, and he was from a country far away. Ahmad didn't know where to sit or what to do because it was his first day of school. He talked a little bit, but it was hard to understand him. He said he was learning English. After lunch, the class went outside to play soccer. All of the kids were picked to be on a team, except Ahmad. Josh remembered what his mother said about sticking up for people who are treated unfairly. Emma remembered what her mother said about unfair patterns and birthday parties. All of a sudden, Ahmad wasn't alone. Emma and Josh were leading him to their team. "We have enough kids on our team," Daniel said. "We don't need him." But Josh was ready. "Step off," he said. "He's playing." "Yeah," said Emma. "We don't want to miss out." And just like that, Emma and Josh gained a new friend and started a better pattern in their school. The end. And now, before we move more deeply into this time of worship and reflection, we will bid farewell to the youngest among us as the K through 5th graders follow their adult leaders out of the sanctuary to their gathering spaces. Follow the signs, and your adult leaders will take you to the lower level. Please join me in singing with love and tenderness as we conclude the time for all ages.
This little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. This little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. This little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. Let it shine, let it shine, let it shine. Everywhere I go, everywhere I go, I'm gonna let it shine. Everywhere I go, I'm gonna let it shine. Everywhere I go, I'm gonna let it shine. Let it shine, let it shine, let it shine.
Once a month, our community shares our offering collection with a local partner organization doing the hard work of progressive activism. This morning, I am pleased to invite John Gorley from Friends of Restorative Justice to the podium to talk about his organization's vital work in Washtenaw County. Let's offer John a very warm welcome.
As you heard, I'm John Gorley. I'm a member of Friends of Restorative Justice, or FORGE for short. So on behalf of FORGE, I'd like to thank you very much for your generosity and your encouragement by sharing your collection with us. FORGE was formed more than 10 years ago as a collaboration of people from many faith communities in Washtenaw County, including this congregation, to find ways to reform our excessively punitive and inequitable criminal legal system. Among the strategies we considered, restorative justice rose to the top as a viable and valuable alternative to the standard retributive justice system. Many of you already know what restorative justice is. You have your own restorative justice group within the congregation, but no doubt some of you are still unsure. Using a very broad brush, restorative justice is a voluntary, victim-centered process for handling a crime where the person who was harmed, the person who caused the harm, support people, and a facilitator all meet together to discuss what happened and why, and how the harm can be repaired. An agreement reached by the two primary participants can be healing for the person who was harmed and rehabilitative for the person who caused the harm. And the process can replace trials and traditional punishments like incarceration, which never heal and seldom rehabilitate. So what does Friends of Restorative Justice do? Forge is an educational organization that works to educate the community on the availability of restorative justice and value of restorative justice. For example, during the recent campaign for sheriff, Forge met with all the candidates, probing their knowledge and appreciation of restorative justice and their support for restorative practices. Also, as another example, Forge recently brought Fred Van Loo, a former prosecutor from Des Moines and a prominent restorative justice practitioner. For 2 days, he discussed the possibilities of restorative justice with local judges, prosecutors, criminal defense attorneys, and the public. A lot more could be said. Forge is the most active advocacy group that I've been involved with personally. Forge members have presented at conferences, studied legislation possibilities, conducted restorative circles in the women's prison, and so on. These examples suggest the kind of thing that your donations today will be supporting. If you have any questions, I'll be available after the service along with other Forge members. Thanks again for your financial support, and I'd like to encourage you also to join us at our monthly meetings and in any of our activities. Thanks.
Thank you, John. As we have just heard, restorative justice has been a priority of this congregation for many years. Today after the service, I encourage you to check out the quilt exhibit hanging on our walls, brought to this congregation from the Lansing UU community to raise awareness about efforts for prison reform. Our elementary youth will be visiting the quilts today as well for a conversation in their gathering spaces. Projects like this are why we partner with organizations like Friends of Restorative Justice. This week's offering will support their continued urgent work, and I encourage you to give generously as you are able. There are many ways to give. The ushers will pass collection baskets, and you're welcome to offer cash or checks. You can also text UUAA to 73256, or you can go to uua.org/giving. Today's offering will now be given and gratefully received. Will the ushers please come forward? As they do, I invite you to rise in body or spirit, wherever you may be, and say with me the words of dedication. To the work of this congregation, which is weaving a tapestry of love and action, we dedicate our lives and these our offerings. Thank you.
Friends, I would invite you to remain seated, but to reach once again for that gray hymnal and turn to number 155 as we sing together Circle Round for Freedom, hymn number 155.
Lovely harmonies on that. Thank you. I wanted to share just a few words of introduction of how I came to know Sheriff Alyshia Dyer. A couple of years ago, I was at the Interfaith Council on Peace and Justice, the ICPJ's, annual dinner. I had been invited to help MC the event, and at this annual dinner, local justice activists are honored for their work in the local community, for the good things they are doing to help build a more just, beloved community in Washtenaw County and beyond. One of the honorees at that dinner was Alyshia Dyer. And following the conclusion of the dinner, Alyshia came up and more properly introduced herself to me and said, "Hello, I'm running to be sheriff." And I didn't even know that there was an election for sheriff because it was still about 2 years away. I thought, well, that's very intrepid, getting going really early like that. And still not knowing much about it, I'm thinking to myself, well, who knows? There could be an incumbent who's running for re-election. There could be 10 people running in this race or eventually running in this race. So it's lovely to meet somebody who's running, but I don't really know much yet about what's happening in this field. So we met and we had a lovely discussion that included, Alyshia sharing her values with me and the things she's thinking about as a candidate, which I really appreciated. In the ensuing months, as the race began to firm up, I noticed how just about every local elected official did not endorse Alyshia, but endorsed other folks running for the same office. Now, that caught my attention because I'm a UU, and often we love underdogs, so I too love an underdog. And that got me thinking, well, what's going on? All these local elected officials are endorsing other people, and I did more digging and I did more learning. And as I began to do that, to learn more, I began to appreciate that who Alyshia is, the values that she has come to in her life, the things she wants to bring alive in her work through those values, were completely in alignment with who we are as Unitarian Universalists, the things we are actively already working on as a community. I felt really, really solid about that. And I felt nervous because to feel that solid, I felt inclined to want to endorse Alyshia. Now, you may or may not know, I can, at a personal level, publicly endorse candidates for office. But in almost 2 decades of ministry, I never have. And this was the first time I was feeling called to do this, but I was nervous about it. And I called up one of my colleagues in the Metro Washington, D.C. area where they deal with elected officials all the time. And I said, what should I do? I've never done this before, but I'm thinking about this. And to boot, I don't think the candidate's going to win. Everybody else who's elected in the whole region is voting for somebody else. They've made that pretty clear. And my colleague said to me, primaries are where we vote for our values. If you can't vote for the things you most deeply believe in a primary, then when the heck are you ever going to? And what would it look like to speak up for those values irrespective of whether the candidate's going to win or not? You speak up for them because it's the right thing to do to speak up for them. And that led me, for the first time in 2 decades, to publicly endorse Alyshia Dyer for sheriff. And here we are, recently installed in January as our county's new sheriff. I wanted to create the opportunity for us as a community to get to know Alyshia the way that I had the opportunity to, a bit more personally, to hear from her directly about her values, who she is, and how she hopes to bring them alive in her work on our behalf. Would you join me in giving a warm welcome to Sheriff Alyshia Dyer?
Thank you, everyone. I am so honored to be here today, and I really appreciate the work of this congregation and all you do for our community. I was talking a little bit with Reverend Manish when we were preparing, and I realized that this is going to be a lot easier for me than normal because of how inclusive you all are to all faiths and spirituality. And as somebody that I grew up here in Washtenaw County, and growing up, we went to a number of different churches and was always feeling very confused about my own spiritual identity. And the values that you all hold resonate very deeply with me, and I just can't thank you all enough for creating such a welcoming space. And I'm very honored to get to talk to you all today. So for anyone that doesn't know me or wasn't as involved in the local election, just a little bit about me. So I grew up here in Washtenaw County to a single parent household where my mother worked most of the time to provide for my younger brother and me. My younger brother calls me his sister/mom because I also had to take care of him a lot and babysit him a lot to my own irritation growing up. And through this, helping take care of my brother and just living in very low income environment, I learned the values of compassion, of sacrifice, and resilience. And like many of our youth today, I faced challenges growing up through my education, and growing up wasn't easy. I was an average student in elementary and middle school, and then I started getting into trouble in high school. I found myself running away a lot, and that is when I started having a ton of contact with our local law enforcement. And like many youth today, I was, looking and reflecting back on that time period. I was trying to find my place in a world that I felt was still very representative of a generation of, be seen, not heard. And, I think many youth still today, unfortunately, are struggling and grappling with this reality. So the positive and negative interactions I had growing up with law enforcement was mostly due to me running away. And when I would talk to local police, sometimes they were very empathetic and understanding, and sometimes they were very cold, very sterile, made me feel very bad about myself. And then friends growing up that I grew up with, also seeing their interactions. And some of those interactions are what really showed me what racism looked like in practice in a community. And one of my friends growing up, we were walking home one day in Ypsilanti, and we were having a beef going back and forth between other girls in our grade. We were in middle school at the time. And we were walking home, and we ended up getting jumped by a group of other girls that we were arguing with. And this is a very unfortunate, very traumatic situation where me and my friend were, trying to fight back, and we were very outnumbered. And then when we finally were able to break away from the group, we ended up going to my house, or my apartment at this time. And my mom is like, "What happened?" We explained to her what happened. She's like, "Well, let's call the police." Well, my friend that was with me is like, "I don't think that's a good idea. Police can be racist," and from my own lived experience, she did not think it was smart. And very ignorantly, my mom and me are like, "Well, no, let's call them because they're supposed to help us. We just got beat up and just got attacked, and we should call the police. This is what you do." So we did. We called the police to come over, and I watched, as we told the police our story of what happened, I watched my friend sharing her perspective on how the beef sort of got started, which it was actually over a guy, so that's a whole nother thing. Lesson learned early on that one. And I'm watching her talking to the police, and even as a young kid, I see them dehumanizing. The way that they are listening and talking to her, I can tell that it's different. And it wasn't anything outwardly explicit that you could point your finger to. It was more of the overall vibe, and seeing my friend very uncomfortable, seeing her face fall, realizing the police officer was not believing her, and then just realizing that it was all pointless calling them. They didn't do anything. And so, that experience, and then later on in high school, I ended up getting falsely arrested by the police because they confused me with another person that had a warrant. And the way I was treated in that incident being very traumatic. And this sort of formed this idea of me getting into law enforcement. I was talking to my friends. I'm like, maybe I'll go into policing. I mean, we know what not to do. We've seen how the police act. We know the times when they do something that's actually helpful. We know when they're being hurtful. And I think that if I go into law enforcement, I can help other young people that have contact with law enforcement, because now I know how not to make young people feel. And this is also where my stubbornness as a value started coming forward, because a lot of people would tell me I'm too nice to be a cop, or women shouldn't do it, it's not a good idea, it's not really a good place for women. Law enforcement is just, it's gonna be hard for me to get into the academy. It was all this very serious negativity around this. And so partly out of stubbornness, and also partly out of me having a limited understanding back then as a kid what professions were actually available. If you would have asked me what consulting or engineering or some of these professions were back then, I probably wouldn't have known, because I was very focused on lawyer, doctor. Probably should have been a lawyer, would have made more money, but lawyer, doctor, nurse, first responder, police, and decided to go into the police academy. So I start Washtenaw Community College, and I joined the police academy. And I remember sitting in the academy and listening to how they're talking about the work. And there were some valuable skills that you learn in the police academy, you learn your what you see on TV, your driving, your tactical operations, first aid, medical, all of that. But there was also this underlying theme that was very, very focused on officer safety, to the point where it really felt like it was almost trying to ingrain fear of the community that you're supposed to be serving. to the point where some people in the academy back then would say, don't shake people's hands because you never know what they may or may not do, which I just thought was strange because, we all shake hands and elbow and et cetera. And listening to the academy, I remember thinking that the academy and really law enforcement wasn't taking into account the fact that we are supposed to be local public servants for the community that we work for. And centering compassion in law enforcement especially is extremely important given that you're in such a direct service for other people. And so getting out of the police academy, I then started working at Washtenaw County Sheriff's Office. And I started out as a boating officer, marine deputy, which is, I basically drove around the waterways. We enforce, we do water rescue emergency, water emergencies we respond to, but mostly we're just driving the boat and like smile and waving, we're on the lakes. Very, very low stress for the most part job. And so I started doing that in the summer after I graduated the police academy, and then I got hired on full-time to be a road patrol officer at the Washtenaw County Sheriff's Office that winter. So I started working as a road patrol deputy, which is basically a police officer but in sheriff language. And I was patrolling for the most part in Ypsilanti Township, which is an area that I grew up in. And my experiences as an officer, I came across a lot of young people that were just like me growing up, that had problems at home, that maybe might have been running away, that were in traumatic situations, and always trying to center my compassion and who I am in the work to make the experience as least harmful as possible. But it was really hard to do that as a rank and file officer. And what I saw when I was in the system policing is how messed up our legal system is, especially when it comes to actually supporting young people and making sure that they can thrive. And I started mentoring young people that were involved in detention and also as well as gun violence. And what I saw, knowing some of them since they were 10 to 11 to ultimately later in life, is you could see the inequity in real time where they would get in trouble for something minor and did not get any grace and constantly would be involved in our legal system. And one of the young people that I was mentoring first got in trouble at the age of, it was 10 or 11, stole an Amazon package off of someone's front doorstep, had a lot of mental health issues, was not getting support, ended up getting truancy issues, getting suspended, expelled from school, and ended up on probation and involved in our legal system, and then after that just kept getting worse and worse. And then that young person never got off of probation throughout their whole childhood, and unfortunately ended up getting killed due to gun violence a couple years back. And that story is also, the reality for many of the youth that I got to know as a police officer, especially in eastern Washtenaw County. And what's really hard is, one is we're losing out as a community because the dreams that they had, the intellectual capital they could have given back to our society is now gone, given that most of them have either passed away or ended up in prison. And then realizing that the oppressive nature of the legal system created a reality where it really mattered what you looked like and where you lived as if you're gonna get equitable resources or not, and actually get met with real support or not. Another story that I remember as an officer, I walked into an a middle school, and schools sometimes want you to come in and do like community engagement related work. And I was there to hang out with kids for a sports event. And one of the young people came up to me and said, "Hey, I don't like the police. You guys arrested my dad. I don't trust you." And we started talking, and I was like, I feel the same way as you when I was your age. And they're like, "Well, why would you get into the profession?" And I'm like, well, some of us that understand how that feels should get in the profession so we can at least make the profession a little less harmful. And we had a really good dialogue. We're going back and forth. We're laughing. We're talking. And then he runs away to go hang out with his friends. And one of the teachers comes up to me and says, was he bugging you? I was like, "Oh, no, he's great. We had a really good conversation." And she said, "Okay, because I keep telling him he's going to end up like his dad if he doesn't behave." And so that sticks with me. And I told the teacher, I said, if someone would have told me that when I was his age, I would have flipped over a desk and probably would have got expelled. But no one did tell me that. And you can't ignore, I wonder all the time, would the teacher have ever said that if this wasn't a young black boy versus a young white girl or someone else of a different race or demographic group? And so challenging these realities in the legal system, I got to a breaking point where I'm like, I'm leaving law enforcement. I can't do this anymore. And I ended up signing up to finish my undergraduate degree from Eastern. I got a bachelor's, and then I got into U of M to do social work. And I ended up going to graduate school to get a master's in social work and public policy. At that time, I was not planning on running for sheriff. I was definitely not planning on going back to law enforcement. I actually started working as a community organizer. So I started working with Moses and WeRock, and so here in Washtenaw County, we have Washtenaw Regional Organizing Coalition, which is faith, labor, and community activists and organizers all working together around issues that matter in the community. And so I started working with WeRock, and I started organizing around changing our legal system. And one of the actions that we were able to take on and stop was putting 60 to 70 cameras in eastern Washtenaw County because the local township government, as well as the sheriff's office, they wanted to put all these cameras around all the entry and exit ways in eastern Washtenaw, and they call them license plate readers, and there's been significant harm attached to this. And so we as a community got together, we organized, we met with the sheriff at the time, we met with township government, we met with community people, and effectively we won, and we were able to stop this from happening. And, even more so now, given our national landscape, unfortunately, I think all the time about the power of that community organizing and how, now we have a situation where you have some of these license plate reader companies that share data with the federal government. They share data with anti-choice states. They share data with immigration enforcement. So thank goodness we were able to stop this from happening in Washtenaw County, especially given the amount of cameras they were trying to put in such an intimate community level, which would have been extremely harmful. And so I think about values and talking about value-driven leadership. I really feel that it was my values that led me to run for sheriff because I was seeing a lot of things that were happening that were harmful. And also I got involved in helping some local judicial candidates as well as the prosecutors campaign back in 2020 and realizing wait a minute, I could run for sheriff. I worked at the sheriff's office, and some of the things that we're organizing to try to get the sheriff's office to do as sheriff, I could just do them. It would be great. And so started talking with community folks, and then ultimately decided to run. And it was a very hard. It was a very hard campaign. It was not easy. It took a lot of courage to stay very grounded in my values, and as well as grounded in the community compassion that really had my back when our political establishment just did not. And what it taught me throughout my upbringing, but as well as on the trail, is how important values are because they are your moral compass or your guiding, it's sort of like your guiding principles when you're in leadership. And so now, flash forward to being sheriff, I think there are several issues that I ran on that UUAA has been deeply concerned with throughout the years. And I'd like to highlight some that are not only critically important, but really give opportunities for partnership with church and with reforming our legal system as well as at the sheriff's office. And we are going to be rolling out community-driven policy teams. And so these are going to be teams that people in the community can join. And we are going to be looking at all of our policies at the sheriff's office together to make sure that our policies are the best they can be, especially given our very uncomfortable climate nationally. And I think it's really important that we have all the intellectual capital at the table that we can. The other thing I'll say is there's been wide racial disparities in Washtenaw County's criminal legal system. In arrest in particular in Washtenaw County, black children only comprise 16% of the population, but 61% of the arrests. And what this means is black children are 8 times more likely to be arrested than their white peers. And we all know these statistics are unacceptable, and it's even more important now than ever to really come together to make sure we are addressing these systemic biases and the racism that perpetuates this to exist. And one thing that I am very dedicated to doing at the Sheriff's Office is making sure that we are not stopping people for low-level traffic stops that aren't safety related. And we all know that I don't think traffic stops are comfortable for anybody, but in talking with some other folks in the space, something we have said multiple times is it's like death by 1,000 nicks, especially for Black and brown folks in our community, Black mothers that have to worry about their sons every day. Research shows that Black mothers in particular are funding our legal system because of the way that we've used local cops to be revenue generators and all the ticketing and the nickel and diming all the time. And so really reducing harm in traffic enforcement is going to be really, really critical, as well as everything else that we're all doing, the restorative justice, the fighting for more accountability and transparency. And I also want to address environmental justice. In this area of drill, baby, drill, and uncertainty, we have a responsibility to hold corporate polluters accountable for the harm they inflict on our communities and our planet. Environmental degradation disproportionately affects marginalized communities, which we all know, and I'm dedicated to advocating for policies that protect our environment and promote sustainability. And I believe that this is another great area that we can partner to make sure that we're doing everything we can. And it's, interestingly enough, the thing I've been attacked on the most is my stance on environmental justice. And I think it's up to all of us to come together on the local side of things to really make sure that we are doing what we can, because we don't know what's going to happen with the national landscape on supporting these issues, right? The other thing I want to talk about is from understanding UUAA, a priority being radical welcoming. Stephanie Spellers defines radical welcome as the spiritual practice of embracing and being changed by the gifts, presence, voices, and power of the other, the people systemically cast out of society. Our undocumented community is under direct threat of being cast out, especially in these times. And as your sheriff, I'm going to continue supporting our immigrant rights leaders, and I'm going to continue standing strong with our immigrant community. I think it's important that we all do that in Washtenaw County. I think it's imperative from a public safety issue, and I have maintained this stance, and I've also talked to our other local law enforcement leaders on this as well, as we are local public servants. We do not enforce federal immigration law. Okay. This is, a welcoming community that I think we all want to keep that way, and so I just want to say thank you all for all you're doing, and know that I'm going to be fighting like hell in the or I shouldn't, I'm sorry. I apologize. Okay. Yes, we're gonna work hard to protect each other. And lastly, I'll say, as your sheriff, I'm accountable to you and to our community. Reverend Manish asked me to speak today about bringing alive values-driven leadership, and a value that I hold extremely deeply is that the community should lead. That is why at the Sheriff's Office, we're inviting anyone interested to join the policy teams that we're going to be creating, and that's also why I think in these times it's so important to stay together and center compassion. I also, in looking at our values, the values that I brought into the Sheriff's Administration are the community-driven values that we ran on and that we developed through listening tours for over 2 years out all over Washtenaw County. And those values are community, compassion, justice, safety, authenticity, and creativity. And I believe that these values must be centered and remembered, and I definitely am looking forward to continuing to center those values. And I always say that in this time, especially for a lot of electeds, it's hard to find courage. It is, we are living in times when it is between the fascism, between the oppression, between just uncertainty, there's a reality where people's courage is being tested every day and all the time. And what I think is really important is when you really center your compassion and your love and your empathy and your care for those around you as well as yourself, it makes having courage a lot easier, because it really makes you feel that you're not just doing this because it's the right thing to do, which it is. You're having and centering your courage because it's personal. And I think we all have a personal obligation to center courage, especially over these next 4 years, given who knows what, could happen, so. And so I'll wrap up by saying, all of you, our neighborhoods, they're not just places where we live, they're our homes, they are what make us who we are. They're filled with diverse voices and experiences, and the church plays a vital role in this. UUAA is a leader in this community, helping to guide it toward a shared vision of love and justice, and I am very honored to be in partnership with you all in this space, and thank you so much for having me here today.
Washtenaw County's first woman sheriff. Thank you. I want to share a word or two with us about another value, and that value is fortitude. Having grit, having perseverance, sticking with something. And this was something that I watched playing out in real time with the election cycle that Alyshia was a part of. As the local political establishment decided that Alyshia is not their candidate, I watched how Alyshia didn't cave, back down, or give in, or resign herself to defeat. I probably would have. Honestly, but instead stuck with it and kept talking about exactly the right things, staying on message, showing commitment and perseverance in the face of adversity, in the face of a difficult local campaign. Thank you for sharing with us some of who you are, Sheriff Dyer, and know that we are cheering you on to succeed being exactly who you are. And I want to offer a word to us about fortitude as well. I know these past 2 weeks have been painfully difficult. Know that this is by design. This is exactly play by play out of what has happened with democratic backsliding and authoritarian autocratic regimes in other parts of the world, including places like Hungary, Poland, India. Overwhelm local activists by doing so much all at the same time that people can't even keep track of what's going on where, in which domain, affecting who. Not just overwhelm, make it so severe that folks feel a sense of wanting to give up, feeling internally exhaustion. Not just that, the desire is for us to feel despair. Because if people who are good-hearted and are local activists start to feel despair, we'll give up. And the autocratic and authoritarian folks get to do whatever the heck they want. This is the playbook that has succeeded in other parts of the world. And so, beloveds, I remind us that this is a time that needs our fortitude. And fortitude is, in fact, that unambiguous, clear grounding in our values and the clarity that we are not going to give an inch. That those values we are holding steadfast to matter, and that we are holding them not just for ourselves, but for future generations. So no, we're not alone. We're not alone. I had this little bit of an instinct that maybe having Alyshia with us early in the Trump second administration might be a good thing, but what a balm on the soul it is to know that we're not alone. It can feel that way because everything we're hearing in the news at the national level is despair-worthy. But remember that that national election was won by a relatively slim margin. There are a lot of good-hearted people everywhere throughout this country, and together we will stay true to our values. May it remain so. Rise in body or spirit as you're comfortably able. Beloveds, go forth into this new week. I have no doubt that it will hold some of the energies that the prior 2 weeks have had, but hold fast to what you know is true inside you. That we human beings, humanity can do better, that we are capable of holding love and compassion for others, that hatred and exclusion are not the way that we have to live. It is a choice, and it is a choice that we can turn away from and refuse to be a part of over and over again. Let hope linger in your heart. Let possibility be brought alive through your words and deeds and actions, and know that this community is cheering you on in that commitment until we are together again. Go in love, go in peace. Amen.